You're listening to the Fashion Ambition podcast, and I'm your host, Natalie Robin. The Fashion Ambition podcast is all about bringing you the tools and strategies to start and scale your business or career in fashion through conversations with industry experts who have been there and done that. Whether you're a startup founder, a new fashion graduate, or a soon-to-be graduate like me, or you just know that a career in fashion is your calling, we have an episode to help you launch. Make sure to keep up with new episodes by following the podcast at The Fashion Ambition on Instagram, where I update you on new episodes every week. You can also find my blog on Instagram at Nomade and Mode and online at nomadandmode.net, where I write all about fashion and travel. You can find all of the links to connect with me in the show notes. So with that, let's get into the episode. Hi, I'm Natalie, and welcome to the Fashion Ambition podcast. I am so excited to share this episode with you because today I will be talking with Sara Wheelwright, who is an award-winning entrepreneur based in Saskatoon, Canada. She's the owner and founder of S&E Trusted Online Directories, which helps to connect people with trusted contractors in their area. In addition to this, she's also a marketing expert and is the owner and founder of Trusted Marketing Services. So in this episode, we'll be talking all about marketing, some tips people can use to get their businesses through the pandemic, and what new graduates can do to put themselves out there in a tough job market. So welcome to the podcast, Sara, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is great.
Of course, my pleasure. So I really wanted to start with how you first got into marketing, because I know it wasn't like a direct route. So, and I think that story is really interesting. So I'd love to start there.
I have in the past when I was younger, I've always been into sales, and I did get a job. Actually kind of doubled my wage overnight. We used to work in a factory, and then I ended up managing to get myself a job with Yellow Pages in the UK. So then I got into the world of marketing sales, and I really enjoyed it because you are able to have, especially with small businesses, you're able to have a real effect on their business because they haven't got huge budgets, right? So I really enjoyed that. And when I eventually moved to Canada, I got a job within the radio industry, in radio sales. Locally here in Saskatoon. So same thing. I enjoyed getting to know the businesses. It was a great way when you move to another country to get to know the lay of the land as you're going around to all of the local businesses and helping them, basically finding solutions. And that's really what marketing is. I think a lot of people think it's pizzazz and magic and, only people with marketing degrees can do it. But really it's about listening and it's about problem solving. And when I was doing this, I realized that I had a problem that, needed to be solved. And that was that as a newcomer to Canada, specifically to Saskatoon, and Saskatchewan obviously has, seasons like nowhere else in the world. That there came some things that I just didn't know. I traveled a lot, but I'd never lived in a climate like this before. So the first thing was like air conditioning and furnace and, vehicles and all of that kind of stuff. And I had a few bad experiences with businesses. And so I felt as if there was something missing. And because my background was in marketing and specifically directory marketing, I felt that there was something lacking as far as a directory for newcomers. So that's really when the first seed was planted for my original business, which started off with trustedsaskatoon.com, which I launched actually 10 years ago this year. So essentially what Trusted Saskatoon is, it's a list of the 40 most searched kind of local service categories and a little bit of retail as well in local markets. And we find, either because they approach us or through personal experience or nominations from their clients, we find people in those top 40 categories. And you would think things like air conditioning and furnace, things like contractors, home builders, plumbers, electricians, auto repair, like all of these categories where people have problems, right? When you hear horror stories in the news, it's oh my God, the contractor wrecked my life, left my house, falling down. I bought this car and it was, terrible, or, these are the things that you hear. So what I wanted to do, because there was already, it seemed, somewhere that you could go to when you had a problem, which was like the Better Business Bureau or trading standards or whatever. But there didn't seem to be anything that stopped problems happening in the first place by having a really strict criteria and contracting people to uphold guarantees. So I explored the concept. I went and asked around and spoke to people, asked about their experiences as newcomers. And I realized as well, it wasn't just newcomers. Everybody had a story, just in different categories, whether it be movers or whatever, and realized that there was an opportunity. So from there, at the time, I was a single mom of 3 kids under the age of 6, including identical twin girls who are 13 now. And it seemed like the best time to start a business. So to the like abject horror of my father in England, he was like, "What are you doing? You've got this great career in radio." And I said, "Well, if I don't do it, I'm going to kick myself for the rest of my life if somebody else does." So it was actually fear of not doing it and somebody else doing it that drove me. And so I jumped in with both feet. I ended up starting the business. At the time, I started with a partner that didn't work out. And I was a little bit tentative, and I still had my job at the radio station. They give me permission, but they weren't very encouraging or optimistic about a website's making money. And basically, I was half in. I put the money in, I'd come up with a concept, but when it came to actually selling it, I was relying on somebody else so I could keep my job. And it wasn't until it started taking off and they actually fired me because they didn't expect it to take off and they saw me as competition, that it actually really did go into a massive boost. So I got fired for the first time in my life. And then 2 months later, trustedsaskatoon.com launched. And in that 2 months, I'd signed up 50 businesses on top of the ones that we'd already picked up. So we were ready to go. And that's how it all began. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd had some business experience, but, not as a business owner. So it was really learn as I go, and quite a few mistakes were made. But the one thing that I did know is I knew marketing, and I knew that there was a need, and I knew that I could help these businesses, the majority of them who were small, under 5, sometimes just one person. And the biggest thing that Trusted Saskatoon does is we become this cooperative. So they give me money, not very much. And then I make that money go as far as they can by promoting the community, telling people why they should go there, and also helping them navigate the marketing landscape, which has certainly changed a lot over the last 2 years, and probably, especially over the last 2 years, but I mean a lot over the last 10 years. When I first started, Yellow Pages was still this thick, and now I think it's about like this. So that's how it all began.
Right. That's awesome. I love that story. And I think the point, especially about like when you're actually let go from your job and then you had such a quick turnaround into, launching your business. I just find that so inspiring, because I think for a lot of people, getting fired is such a painful moment, and it can really stop you in your tracks if you let it. So I love that. But switching gears to small businesses, like right now, I was wondering, if somebody is really struggling right now, because I guess, there are particular challenges going on right now because of the pandemic, and a lot of small businesses already don't have a lot of money to work with when it comes to like their marketing. So I would love to know, what would you suggest in terms of low cost, like marketing strategies for somebody who's really struggling right now?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have probably 100 small businesses as clients, whether they be ongoing clients for the directories or whether it be marketing, people that come to me once or twice a year, and people that I deal with on a regular basis. And I would actually say the small businesses that I deal with, probably 90% of them are having a better year than they've had before. Certainly over the last few years. And it's the 10% that are in industries such as catering, restaurants, some fitness, if it's gyms and things like that, personal services, so your salons and things like that, anyone to do with events, hospitality, they are struggling. And what I saw with a lot of businesses was when the pandemic initially hit, they just dropped off the face of the earth. They stopped communicating. They stopped communicating through their social media. They stopped their advertising and held their collective breath. And some of them just didn't start again. And I actually reached out to some of my clients and said, if you're still in business, you need to be communicating to people because they still need to eat. Mm-hmm. They still need to, do renovations. They still, all of these things that have to be done. You don't have to do it overly. It's okay to say, how you're feeling, as long as you don't, kind of go into make people depressed about things. What you have to do is if you have time in your hands, for a lot of these businesses, and especially the ones I've dealt with, I mean, they're great businesses. I mean, I deal with them because they're great, right? And we just tell more people. And, a lot of the times in the past, they didn't have the time to actually be involved in doing a lot of marketing or doing their own marketing. And then when they were given this time that was forced upon them, I told them it was a gift. And that what they had to do was take the time to not worry about things that they had no control of, but to think about how they wanted to communicate going forward in a way that they could fit into their business as a whole and create something that was better than what they were doing previously. So, of course, some of them, found that really difficult, and I spent a lot of time advising them, but the first thing is, every business, they're an expert in what they do, right? Especially if they've been doing it for a while. So the problem that they can have is they think that everybody knows how to do things. And I think the first thing you do is you break down all of the inquiries and questions that you have coming from people over the months or the years, and then you start answering those questions. Because if one person has asked you, 50 people have thought about it, so then you can use your expertise in a way that adds value to people's lives. And if you can become the expert, and it doesn't cost much because it's all in here, it's all your experience. And if you can break it down, because people like simplicity, they don't like complex. If you can break it down into simple bite-sized pieces and just educate people, then you become the expert, and people want to deal with the expert, not the other guy.
Right, for sure. So how would someone go about making those questions or the answers to those questions visible? So would they do that on social media, or
that's the cheapest way for sure. I mean, but right now social media isn't even like it was. Social media used to be you'd put a post on Facebook and maybe a picture. When it first started, there was no pictures. It was just, you just put a post up there. So then it evolved to having a post and a picture. And now it's videos and a post. And if you're really smart, you'll have a website with a blog, and you will utilize the social media to interest people in subjects that are relevant to your business. It's got to be relevant. And then you'll take them back to your website to read more information about that specific subject. And to be honest, if what you're saying is something that people are interested in, they will click and they will go there and they'll take the time to get to know you. And if you take that time to just write, and that's what it comes down to, is time. And certainly if you're having a slower time because of the pandemic, this is the ideal time to create lots of content that when things do eventually come back to a close to normal or a new normal or a new landscape, then you have this library of fantastic content that's always going to be relevant that you can then pass out. Where you are the source. You're not directing people, over there. It's like, if you're going to write a travel blog and then you just kind of said, hey, my friend Susan went here and this is what she said about this place. I mean, what's the point in you being that person? It's better off that Susan wrote it, not you wrote it, So, don't direct people. Of course, you can talk about other experts in the industry. Let's say, I don't know, Mike Holmes, for example, and maybe a contractor wants to talk about why he doesn't agree with Mike Holmes, and you can utilize some of that information. But you should be the source. You're the expert, and social media allows you to do that. The pushback that I often get from smaller contractors or smaller business owners is they're really great at cars, or they're really great at building houses, but they're not good at writing. And then I throw back at them and say, well, forget the writing then. Do a video. Do a vlog. I've got an auto body guy down in Regina right now, John Bergen, who, hates writing, but I've got him to do 5-minute videos about frequently asked questions. And he just does it from his car or his office. And it's authentic and it's real. And he knows what he's talking about. It's not like he has to explain the string theory, right? This is something that they do all the time. And because they can do it without an audience now, and you can just have your camera and just talk, then it makes it a lot easier. And people like that, that's real. It's not highly produced, and it's cheap, and it goes out there. And if you do it frequently enough, because that's one of the keys of marketing successfully, you've got to have relevance. It's got to be frequent, and you've got to do it consistently, and you will be successful. It might not be the first video or the first blog. It might not be the 10th video or the 10th blog, but eventually you start building up this content that people engage with, and you will get that opportunity to become the expert in the marketplace.
Right. So a lot of businesses realized the mistake of not being online when the pandemic hit. So do you have any tips as to what they can do to now get themselves established in terms of an online presence?
Yeah. So, after the initial kind of, collective breath and when things started to take off again, they really did. There was people that we had pitched websites to, and it had come to us, a year, 2 years before, 6 months before, and people that we'd never heard of were all reaching out. So it was a little overwhelming from a marketing point of view. And I know that I speak for many people in the industry, because of course we wanted to help, but we only had so many hours in the day. And e-commerce sites specifically, are not something that you can just build that are good, and quality is very important.
Right.
So I think the first thing is do you have to have your own website? I think that was one thing that people come to us all the time for apps. And I'm like, why do you want an app? Because we think we should have one. I'm like, well, let's start off with what you want to have happen, right? So I think very important in business and in marketing is to start off with the goals. Quite a lot of times people try to tell us how to do a website or tell us how to do marketing because they think this is how it should work. And that's not the case. It's like you taking your car to a mechanic and saying, okay, so my car's not running. So I think if you take the engine out and then put it over there, then you just wouldn't do that.
Right.
But for some reason with marketing, people think that they have to try and tell us how they think it should work. And we say, just stop. Tell us what you want to happen. What's the goal of what you want to do? So, for example, a store that, perhaps is a retail store, and actually we have one just in our building, Etc's in Saskatoon. Mm-hmm. So Joy had no online presence. She just had a Facebook page, and even that was fairly new. So, and she really is a very relational person. She has a lot of clients that will come through on a regular basis, and she just didn't feel like a need, to be honest. She's downtown, she's right up by Midtown, etc. So when this all hit, she panicked because she obviously was shut down initially and she didn't know what to do. So luckily, we, when I say we, I mean Trusted Marketing Services, one of the clients that we've been working on, and we actually had a 5-month build, is a company called Local House. So I don't know if you've heard of Local House, but that started here in Saskatoon. And localhouse.ca is essentially skip the dishes for retail. So,
oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so we've built a full ecosystem for them where people have their individual stores, just like they have their individual restaurants on skip dishes, and you order from the stores through Local House. It does the full checkout process, and you get delivery same day or next day, where they have a delivery network. So for Joy, I said, Joy, don't think about a website right now, because she knew that we started at normally about $6,000 to $7,000, which would be a decent e-commerce website. I said, just don't right now. We're building something that's going to be perfect for you. So all Joy has done is she set up a shop in Local House. All she has to do is upload her products into there, and then people can buy and then get delivered the same day or next day or whatever it might be. So it's ideal. So she didn't need a website. And beyond the local option, the Local House is great because it's local and it's owned by a local entrepreneur that actually is in retail themselves. And it's now available in Saskatoon and Regina. You also have things like Etsy. You also have things, I hate to say it, like Amazon, right? Where people have those stores. So the first thing is, do you actually need to have your own website? And of course, if you're a major brand, yes, is the answer. But if you are a specialty store or something like that, perhaps that's not. Maybe getting onto something like Etsy or Local House specifically, is that you're going to benefit from the marketing that they do, driving people to the mall. Because essentially what these e-commerce marketplaces are is like a virtual mall. And the benefit of being in a mall is when you go to Shoppers to go pick up your prescription, you walk past shops and you go in them, right? Certainly you did before the pandemic, where you pretend to be straight to it now. But being in a mall means that you pay extra for that mall traffic. And so being in a virtual mall is the same kind of thing. So if somebody comes specifically looking for a product and it's built in such a way that you can see other stores, you just go and investigate. And the benefit of these online marketplaces is I don't have to physically leave my house in the cold weather, park and hope I can, get parking that's close to the entranceway. I can do it all from my sofa whilst I'm watching Netflix on TV. And in this case, it actually gets delivered to my door the same day. So I'm getting my instant gratification. So it's a win-win. So I think the first thing is, don't think that what you think is the solution is the only solution and the best solution. Looking around to see what's already there is probably the best advice I would have for a lot of marketing things. Why do you think you need an app? Maybe you just need your website to look better on a mobile device and function better. An app is a huge commitment. I mean, we all have apps on our phones, and I've got kind of mine here, and you've got the ones that make the homepage, and then you've got the other one. And I don't know about you, but I dump apps on a regular basis. As I look at the fact that my pictures and my kids are more important than the space that an app takes up that I haven't used for ages. Right. So, don't worry about getting an app unless what you have is really suitable for that. It shouldn't be a vanity piece of marketing just because your friend has one that has a business that's nothing like yours. Right. So I think the first thing is you need to know about the why. And I think in life and business, in entrepreneurship, it's always about the why and finding out about what you want to have happen and then finding the experts to guide you to that end result that you're looking for.
Right. Because, and I guess that's why you do consult experts, because they are the ones who know about those kinds of platforms. Whereas your immediate thought might be to, build an app that's going to take you months to create, or a website that you might not know how to build. So,
and you know what? I mean, apps, for a decent app, even that with a decent app, you're looking at, 25,000. So even when we discern that people, could actually use an app and it's a good thing, the first thing that I recommend is not that we build it, is that we go find somebody that's already built something like it and we ask to see if they'll white label it.
Okay.
So again, I might be cutting my nose off to spite my face, but I want to give the best advice. And if I do that, what happens in business, giving the best advice, even if it isn't the most profitable for me, in the long run has worked out to be the best and most profitable thing for the business.
Right. Because then that builds that trust with people. They know that you're going to give them the most honest and best advice, even if you're not benefiting, right then and there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have different advice depending on whether the company is direct to consumer or business to business? Do you have different advice as to how different kinds of companies should market themselves online?
It really is. It really just depends again on how their transaction is and what their goal is, right? Are they selling us something? Are they selling something tangible? Is it office supplies? It's business to business, versus, flowers, which, could be business to business or business to person. Essentially, it doesn't really matter. It might be different people that you're targeting, but that checkout process is pretty similar. It's just the flowers obviously need to be delivered quicker because they're perishable, where the office furniture hopefully isn't. Right. Not that quick anyway. Yeah. So I think it very much depends on where you're at, and it's less of a business to business thing. I would say that what I've noticed is that people who are business to business try much harder and almost too hard to sound more complicated on their websites. Okay. And I listen to podcasts quite a lot, and I walk every day. And I don't know if you've heard of Blinkist, but it's a great app I've had for a couple of.
I think so. Yeah. Actually, I think you may have mentioned it last time we talked. Yeah.
I love it. And I go for an hour and I can listen to 3 books. So I've just been listening to quite a bit about Steve Jobs and Apple right now.
Okay.
And, essentially, do you want to be Apple or do you want to be Dell? When you look at a Dell website versus an Apple website, I mean, this is crammed with information and it's all about specs and blah, 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 where Apple is just, look at this beautiful machine that we built.
Right.
The simplicity of it, right? And, sometimes they don't even put specs on it. They just put a picture of the product and that's enough to make you want to have it. So I think that the people tend to think too much inside the bottle. And when you're inside the bottle as a business owner or researcher or whatever, it's very difficult to read the label because you're not your ideal customer. So quite often we have to demystify things for people because they want to put in so much information. Or, for example, when we tell them to write a blog, they get too technical. I'm like, no. You're not writing a blog for yourself or for one of your colleagues. Who are you writing the blog for? It's for an investor that doesn't know much, that you're trying to kind of explain what you do, or it's for somebody that wants to build a house and they don't want to hear about grades of insulation. They want to, hear about what the best thing in the house is to spend money on if they only have a budget, right? So you really have to step outside. And that, again, is where it's good to have experts, because quite a lot of times what we can do is we'll walk into a project that somebody thinks they've started and we just start pulling bits off it. And just say, no, that doesn't want to go there. That's going to be far too much information. Or you're trying to put this over here. And that's where marketing comes in. What we do a lot of times is really simplify everything, take it right back to, what we want to have happen, and then just work back from there. Okay.
So it's really about streamlining things a lot of the time then.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, simplifying things. I mean, I think it's when you go to a website or when you have a transaction in a store, you want it to be easy, right? If it becomes difficult, I mean, that's what I said, kind of about Local House being great because you get that instant gratification. And what we've become as people of privilege, in the place that we live and the time that we live in, is we want things and we want them now. And if we don't get them now, we get irritated. In a few minutes, our shoulders go up and we're like, oh, I can't be this. Off we go. And we decide to go shop somewhere else, right? Even if it's something we actually really wanted, we have very little patience, and what you want to do as a business or a blog, whether it be selling something or selling yourself as well, you got to make it really, really clear what you want to have happen. And you have to make the pathway from prospect to sale to be really straightforward, a straight line. You're almost building, with a business, you're building a railway. And what you want to do is you want people to jump on your train and you want them to go from, prospect to sale, pretty quickly. You take them on that journey. And if you keep on putting rocks on the road of your success, eventually people, even if they really, really want that product or they really care about you, they'll just stop removing the obstacles. And I just say, this is too hard. I'm going to go over here for the easy option. So it's really important to think about that transaction process and whether it be on the website. If you have an only online business, the worst thing that can happen is when you open up a website that everything's just been thrown at you. Can you imagine if you walked into a retail store and everything was just like tossed at you as soon as you walked through the door? Or if you looked in a window and it was just everything that was in the store was just kind of shoved into the window, it's too much. You become overwhelmed. So the idea is, honestly, is to be like Ikea. I always say to people, a good business, because Ikea has an in and out. It takes you on a pathway and a journey, plus things that you didn't even know that you wanted, that you weren't ever going to look for if you just had a choice to go to one department or another. It takes you on a journey that actually is quite pleasant. They feed you halfway round. And you've got bags to pick up stuff all the way. They make it so easy to spend money with them. And you go there. People go to IKEA for a day trip.
I know. I've actually, full disclaimer, have never been to an IKEA. There isn't one in Saskatoon, and I've never had the opportunity to go to one in some of the other cities I've lived in. But yeah, you're definitely selling it to me right now.
Yeah. Oh, I
should go check it out.
Yeah, the Swedes are fantastic. They've got a sort of simple, minimalist, but very, very persuasive. And that's what I say to people. That's how your business should be. That's how your website should be, where it's intuitive. And the fact that and as I said, with these blogs and things, if somebody's going to be going back to your website to read a blog that you've written as an expert on whatever it is, whether it's events or catering or whatever. When people go and read that piece of content, you want to make sure that after they've read that they have that opportunity to then read more, because people want more of what they want, right? Making it easy. So if they like that content on, how to cook vegan, you then, hey, if you're interested in this, here's more information on that. And people can then follow that. Because if you just end that conversation abruptly, then you've lost the opportunity to take them deeper into your world and get them to trust you and eventually get them to be customers of yours.
Right. I find that whole kind of pathway, like process, to be really interesting, because it's just something that I'm learning about right now, actually, with blogging. Because I think when I first started, a lot of the advice was post a photo every day, just post it was very fluff. It was very about like building followers on social media. But now what I've learned is it's more so about, okay, what are you actually offering people? And then how can you like answer a question or solve a problem in some way, and then build a funnel or a path or some way for them to go from A to B to finally, purchasing with you. So yeah, I find that really, really interesting. Another thing that I wanted to ask was, what advice would you give to somebody who doesn't have the time basically to invest in their marketing efforts? Like, do you have any good platforms that you would suggest that really takes that workload off?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that they have to think about is, number one, if we talk about social media, like what platforms are they on? And if they're on 7, why 7? Again, what's the goal? Because it's much better to own one market than have very little ownership in 7. Right. So I say when people talk about, markets, it could be owning a city, it could be owning Instagram, right? It could be whatever that thing would be to you, whether it's an online or not. So that'd be the first thing is, how much time are you putting into marketing? Or are you not actually allocating time in your calendar to do that? So I think what it is as well, people spend a lot of time being busy and not actually achieving things. So I think, when you're in business and as an entrepreneur or, looking to kind of make changes in your life, I think what you have to do is really discern in the 24 hours that you have in a day, what are you doing in those hours? I actually use and have done for a few years now software called Trello.
I know Trello. Yeah.
Yeah. So task management. And I probably use it. Everyone uses it in their own different way. But I mean, for people that don't know, it's essentially a kind of like Post-it notes on lists, like we used to have, but it's actually virtual, and you can move your Post-its or your tasks from one side to the other, from coming up next to this week to today to done. And it's great to get that done. So what I find is, you can add checklists on there. In fact, that's where I had this interview and with attachments and all of the rest of it. So the first thing you have to work out is, what are you doing in the hours of the day? What time are you wasting? What time are you having that isn't actually scheduled? And I think, putting in time for marketing, because that's what a lot of small business owners and a lot of business owners don't do. They don't actually have time. So what happens is they think, oh, I need to do some Facebook posts. And then they do 3 that day. And then they don't do them, Right. So I think it's having a plan. It's having time set aside and being realistic. Like, you've got to have that time. You've got to use it, whether it's 1 hour a week, whether it's, 1 hour every other day, and start then planning what you're going to do. So, if you're the expert and you know what those questions are, you don't have to do everything in real time. So what we do, and what most marketing companies do, is when we do marketing for people, we're pre-planned. We post a month ahead. We've got everything in buckets. So, for example, I'm just doing some stuff for the taco time right now. And taco time, we have menu features, we have reviews from customers, we have branding stuff about the company and the history and stuff like that. We've got spotlight on location. So we've got these buckets, and then we make sure that we're talking about everything in these buckets every month. And then we provide content that leads back to the website. So we plan all this out on a calendar in advance with the text and the content. And then we create the creatives and then we pre-schedule it.
Right.
All done. Because most businesses have their seasons that are busy and seasons that aren't. And, I think as well, you can sometimes tell when a business is busy because that's when they stop doing marketing, which is the best time to stop because that's the time where most people are looking for their products and services. So that really should be more available than any other time. That's like a person that sells Christmas trees not talking about Christmas trees until July. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, we're talking about Christmas trees, October, November, December. So, but that's when they're too busy to start talking about Christmas trees. So it really is pre-planning and having this. And I think, again, big businesses know this and small businesses think of marketing as an expense. And marketing is an expense. It's an investment. So you should put time into that because the return that you can have by doing it properly is huge.
Right. And planning it out ahead of time so that when you are busy, it's already set up for you. You don't have to create something while you have a million other things going on. So I think that's really smart too.
It is. And also as well, if you have pre-planned everything, and let's say you do 2 or 3 posts a week, which is more than adequate for most businesses, and then something comes up that's like special, the pressure is off you. You've already got your 2 posts a week. Something's come up that you want to talk about. Sometimes it might be because it's something, let's say it's a small business in Saskatoon and we're talking about this week, which has been like the coldest week of the year and probably the century, I think.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if you had something that was related to that, whether it's an air conditioning business or you're a retail business that sells warm clothing. It's okay to do some posts on the day that relate to what's going on outside because that's authentic. But if you had nothing going on, that would feel like pressure. But because you already have those 2 posts and it's kind of probably going to be cold in February anyway, and you've probably covered that base, it allows you that freedom to go and make that post on the day without feeling that you have to. It's because you want to. And that's, again, is going to come across very well because it's that authenticity and people can see that you're there. And again, if you feel comfortable, you can do a video and stuff like that, even better. Right.
So it's much more spontaneous. And then you can kind of, I guess, feel a little bit more at ease rather than forcing yourself to create something. And people typically can pick up on that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the times people don't do marketing because they don't know what to say. So, and it's more about what they want to say at that moment. So if you already have pre-planned out what you're going to say, all of a sudden you feel better because that niggling thing, that's behind you that's saying, oh, you haven't done a Facebook post for a week, that's already taken care of. So you're under less pressure and it just becomes an easier process.
Right. So I want to be mindful of your time. So I just have a couple more questions left. But so the next kind of category that I wanted to cover was new graduates, because I think that's another group of people who are nervous right now to graduate into kind of an uncertain market. So I was wondering what kind of strategies can people be using to make themselves seen right now?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, whomever sends resumes to me or applies to jobs, I am going to go check them out online. So you want to make sure that you have good social media. Even if, I don't know, kind of if you have LinkedIn, but if you don't, you should make sure that it's professional, it's up to date. Again, taking some time to write some contents about and post them on that platform. So you don't have to have your own website or your own blog. You can utilize the ones that are already there about what you're passionate about what you've been studying. I think that's important. Making sure that, and I tell this to my kids all the time. So I've got a 17-year-old and 13-year-olds. They set up some social media accounts when they were 11 or 12 that I didn't know about, that they don't know the passwords to. Like, get rid of all of that shit.
Right. Yeah.
Also what I would suggest doing if you haven't already, and I don't know whether they told you this at school, is you should go and get everything on every platform with your name on it and go secure it.
Right.
And your picture on there so they know it's you. You don't have to use that platform. But what you don't want is somebody else to get your name and maybe they're not somebody that you want to be associated with, and they're not posting content that would look at you if we're just having a cursory look for that name and we haven't seen what you look like, you don't want to be associated with that. So that would be definite advice. And making sure that, you are active and that you are contributing, interacting. I have had a very positive experience with LinkedIn, for example, and also with Facebook, with people reaching out. I think there's opportunity there. And if you particularly want to go work for a certain industry or a certain company, then you should be following them on social media. You should be following the individuals, the key people within the company. Try to be interacting with them, make an impression upon them. And show your passions and what you stand for. And then you won't be an unfamiliar name in the pile of applications.
Right, for sure. I think that point about personal PR is so important too, to just make sure that, there's nothing from 10 years ago that you wouldn't want a potential employer seeing. I think a lot of people, because social media is social and it's meant to be fun and stuff, don't necessarily think all the way down that path. But yeah, it is.
Believe me, I do marketing for some politicians and parties and stuff, and sometimes they don't either, right? Things that they did or said, 10 years ago can come up to bite them. So it's an ongoing thing, and that's what I got to be cognizant of, is that there's a record of everything. And I think it's really important to be aware of that. And it's much, much easier to scrape, things that you don't want now than it is trying to do that later on.
Right, for sure. Definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah. So the very last question that I wanted to ask you was, what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self when you were first getting started in your career?
Ask for help more often. Mm-hmm. I'm very headstrong, and that's both a blessing and a curse. And I'm a great person for somebody that's starting a business, because I can tell them all of the mistakes that I made. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the times I went in with too much optimism, which you need some, otherwise you'll never start, right? You'll never get off the ground. Optimism in people. And I think something that was said to me recently was, when hiring or choosing who to partner with or choosing who to go in business with, don't plant potatoes and expect strawberries.
Right.
Be very honest with what you need. And if that person, no matter how much you like them, doesn't mean that you should be hiring them. Doesn't mean that you should be going into business with them, even if they're your best friend in the world. You've got to really be objective when making those decisions. And as well, take the time to really try to sit down with people in industries that you're interested in and pick their brains. I certainly would give anybody advice, if they were looking to marketing or just getting into business. I do actually mentor a lot of women, mm-hmm. And give them that advice. And definitely ask for help. You don't have to do everything yourself, and learn from people who have made mistakes and don't make those same mistakes.
Right. No, I think that's such a good point, because so often we think that we have to know how to do things by ourselves, and we have to know how to do them perfectly.
Perfection is overrated. It really, mm-hmm. And I think that it's okay to fail, but I think as well, if you're in a position where you are going to be hiring people, the old adage is hire slow, fire fast.
Right. So being able to kind of discern what skill set you might need in a particular role and value that over maybe the personality or maybe not personality is the right word, but how much you like that person in another life setting.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we're attracted to people like us, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody's like you and you're having an interview with that person, you're like, oh my God, she's fantastic. She's like me, and that can be a trap, because, quite often, for example, with design and development, really the main traits are introversion. Mm-hmm. When they get into the zone. So having someone that's an extrovert in a highly detailed job can be a nightmare.
Right.
So you really have to be careful in those positions, and you have to be objective, what you're looking at. And you also have to be aware that, you don't have to do everything, and you're not going to be the expert at everything. And when you're avoiding something, that should be the first thing that you pass off to somebody else when you can, because that means you don't like it.
Right.
So that's great. And you won't do those things well.
Right. Yeah, no, great advice. All right. Well, I want to, we are a little bit over time here. So thank you so much again for taking the time. I so appreciate it. And I personally feel like I learned quite a bit. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. And you take care. And yes, hopefully we'll get to see you in person kind of once. I think we'll go out for a tea or a coffee.
Yeah, we should. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fashion Ambition podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Sara and Trusted Marketing Services, you can find the website at trustedmarketingservices.com. You can also find the link in the show notes. If you liked this episode, make sure to leave a review, and if you got any great takeaways, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at Nomade and Mode, and follow the podcast page at The Fashion Ambition to be updated whenever there's a new episode. I know that I always learn so much from each of the guests on the podcast, and I would love to know what stood out most to you. So feel free to tag me on Instagram with a screenshot of this episode and let me know what you learned. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode of The Fashion Ambition.